So it's a group member. It's an anonymous post. Again, we don't like putting people on blast, so we're not going to share names here. But it says, "Moms, my 18-year-old son is struggling with some mental health stuff. He doesn't have a PCP. Where do I start? He's been totally against, quote, talking to someone about it until now. I need to get him the help he needs. Thanks for any advice or recs."
Yeah.
Teens.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Teens.
Yeah. I mean,
it's like, what do you do, right? I hear that all the time. Like, where do I even start?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because you don't know when it's like, I heard someone say recently a 411 or a 911, right? Like, what do I need to do something about this? Is this just a phase? Like, am I just, like what's happening? I feel like a lot of the time, that's the hard part, is just like, how serious is this?
Yeah.
Hey Mom Nation, welcome to Mental Wealth with Laura Wood and Katie Holly Lambert, where we talk through generational trauma so we can leave a new legacy for our children. Counselor Laura is with Benavieri Counseling out of Chandler, Arizona, and you can find her on Facebook, on the web, or by the link in the show notes. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing so good.
Me too. Happy Thursday. It's like finally at the point out there where I don't think I'm going to get blown off the street. Yesterday was a crazy day.
It really was crazy. And I hate it. I hate this weather. I want it to just be nice and like 80 and like sunny.
Yeah.
Ready for summer.
I'm totally with you. I am such a summer girl. And everybody I say that to, I swear, is like, ew, summer too hot.
I know.
And I'm like, no, bring it. Like, I dig the extreme heat.
Same. I really love it. I do.
Well, we're on the same page with that and many, many other things. So, hey, everybody, and welcome to February's episode of Mental Wealth, where we work on ourselves as parents, as mamas, so that we can create a new legacy, right? And not pass down our JUNK to our kids because it's just not theirs.
Yeah.
It's
not theirs.
It's not theirs. So why should they be dealing with our stuff, which is going to cause them just, problems in the future? So here we are talking through it. I am on with my very favorite, Laura Wood. I don't know any other Laura Wood, but you would still be my favorite even if I did.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad. Thank you so much.
Laura Wood with Benavieri Counseling is here, as she is every month, talking through different things that we go through as moms. We really, really like to pull posts out of the group, especially anonymous ones, so we don't put anyone on blast. But love to talk through what you guys are dealing with, like real time out there, like, boots on ground. What are you guys dealing with? So if you have any specific burning questions or any topics that you would really like to see us chat about, then you could just shoot me a message or comment below on this episode here, and I will see that and we can add it to our agenda for future. But before we hop into that, Laura, do you know Jenny Estabrook with American Patriot Lock and Key?
I do. She's actually helped me when I had to rekey a rental of mine.
She's amazing, right? Like totally on it. You call her and it's almost like you're not even off the phone yet and she's there.
Yeah, it was like same day, Johnny on the spot. I loved it.
She's pretty awesome. They are valley-wide. They're a locksmith company. Something that they do that is really cool. Oh, they work residential, commercial, and automotive. So if you need, if you get locked out of your car, for instance, which is a really good thing to know, right? They also, this is something cool too that I love for my clients, real estate Katie here, right? Working with real estate clients, is they will move your safe. So if you have a safe, like a big old safe where you put all your documents and all your stuff and jewelry and whatnot, a lot of times movers will shy away from that. Yeah. And American Patriot Lock and Key will get that moved for you. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Wow. That is cool. Those big, heavy, I always wonder how anybody gets any of those in their houses.
Yeah. It's scary to me. I won't watch. We had our safe moved and I was like, ooh, tell me when it's over.
Yeah.
Yikes. But anyway, give them a call, guys, if you need an amazing locksmith. It is a family-owned business, 480-717-6470. And that's Jenny Estabrook. She is an amazing Mom Nation member. She has been with us for years and years, and we love her. So Laura, this is actually a post that happened pretty recently in the group. I know that sometimes when we hop on, we're grabbing posts from like, the month prior or whatever, depending on what we want to talk about that day. But I saw this one as I was flipping through. So I'm going to share my screen here so that I can read it. And for those of you that are on the podcast and are only listening to the audio version, and this will be helpful for you. So it's a group member. It's an anonymous post. Again, we don't like putting people on blast, so we're not going to share names here. But it says, "Moms, my 18-year-old son is struggling with some mental health stuff. He doesn't have a PCP. Where do I start? He's been totally against, quote, talking to someone about it until now. I need to get him the help he needs. Thanks for any advice or recs."
Yeah.
Teens.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Teens.
Yeah. I mean,
it's like, what do you do, right? I hear that all the time. Like, where do I even start?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Cause you don't know when it's like, I heard someone say recently a 411 or a 911, right? Like, what do I need to do something about this? Is this just a phase? Like, am I just, like what's happening? I feel like a lot of the time, that's the hard part, is just like, how serious is this?
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the big questions that I get a lot, is like, okay, well, when they say XYZ, or if they're feeling this way, like, how long does this go on? Is this normal? Is this not normal? I don't know if this mom is feeling that way specifically, but like, even with my own kids, I feel like a lot of the time, like what they do, I'm like, I wonder if other people's kids are doing this.
Yeah.
I wonder if my kids are the only kids that are like doing this particular thing. A lot of times it's like isolating. Maybe they're feeling like sad or not motivated. Maybe they're like not wanting to do the things that they used to want to do. Like all of a sudden, like maybe they loved like football, and then all of a sudden they're like, meh, I'm over it. Like, I don't want to play anymore. It's like, how do you know if that is a big deal or if it's not a big deal? I mean, I'm guessing that's kind of what this parent and maybe other parents out there are kind of going through.
Yeah. I like what you had said at the beginning. I think what you meant is it's probably important to take a quick step back and assess if we're in a mental health crisis first and foremost, right? Because if we're in a mental health crisis, then we know that phone number and we know we need help like immediately. So what kinds of things for moms that are struggling or maybe are unsure, but what kinds of things would you say would be sort of a flag? Hey, there's something crisis going on here.
Sure. When I see a client or a child who is having thoughts of suicide, self-harming, sometimes we're starting to maybe develop like using substances. Maybe they're getting into drugs or alcohol. If I have a kid who's saying something like, I feel like I just don't want to be here anymore, those like suicide and suicide adjacent type statements, it's always okay to ask more questions. It's always okay to say like, okay, let's talk about that. Right? Like, what do you mean? Can you help me understand? I'm so sorry that you're feeling that way. That must be really hard. Like that's what I would say is like, whoa, I'm so sorry you're feeling that. Well, that must be really hard. You're not alone. Can you tell me more about that? And I would ask specifically, are you thinking about doing something to hurt yourself? I think that's really scary. Like, your eyes got big, Katie, when I said that. You're like, yeah. Cause like, I hear this a lot. Like, I don't want to say anything. Like, I don't want to ask. I don't want to because then they're going to like think about it more.
Yeah.
That's not true. It's always better to ask than to not ask, because if we don't ask and we're afraid, that sends the message to the child that they're not okay to talk about it, right? That this is a scary thing and I can't talk about it because it makes everybody upset and uncomfortable. And so while yes, that's true, it makes everybody upset and uncomfortable, it is still something that needs to be talked about and spoken about out loud.
Yeah.
And anytime a kid is talking about this, we take that seriously every time.
So in your example, they're at least speaking those words. They're saying, hey, I telling you kind of how they feel ish.
Yeah.
Have you ever had experience with or one of your clients or know anyone that's maybe not be verbalizing that and in that space?
Yeah. And it's hard to know what's going on inside of someone's mind, but like I do see a lot kids just and adults too, but just isolating, right? Like moving away from things that they typically would like to do. So things like, oh, I used to go out every weekend and have, we used to go roller skating on Saturdays or something. And then all of a sudden just like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. And it's like for no reason. Okay, well, what's happened? Something happened. Something made that different. And so if we can get information about that, we want to ask about that. So if it's just like a general, like sort of distancing from things that they really once enjoyed, a lot of times there's something behind that. Maybe they're feeling uncomfortable with their friends. Maybe if it's like a team sport or something, maybe the coach got weird. Maybe somebody said something to them and it was uncomfortable, or it made them feel bad, or they saw something they didn't want to see or whatever, right? So a lot of times dramatic changes like that can lead to changes can be indicative of, I should say, something that's happened in their environment. And then other times it can be something that's happening within them. So we see, I'm tired all the time. I have no energy anymore. I just don't have motivation. Like I'm moving a lot slower. Like we can physically see things like that. And those are signs of an internal shutdown. And so an internal shutdown can show us that the person is experiencing some type of distress leading to a depression. An internal shutdown and sort of a giving up can be signaling to us that like they're feeling like maybe I almost like the only words that are coming to mind are like life's not worth living kind of thing. Like there's just no purpose, like just who cares, like just blah, like everything's whatever, like nothing really matters, just sort of that disengagement. Like when we're seeing that, we can know that the kid's not feeling great.
Right. Like if you're noticing maybe pattern changing of their eating patterns, maybe they're not eating as healthy or as often, sleeping a lot, maybe not taking care of themselves personally, like keeping their hair washed and their teeth brushed and that kind of thing. Do you feel like those might be signs as well?
Yeah, especially if it's a change, right? So if they are doing that and then they're not, then we can say like, okay, something's different here. Something's going on. The way that they once felt isn't the way they feel now. If we're seeing that that's sort of like a habit and a pattern that they've been disengaged for a long time, we still want to intervene, but we might intervene in a different way. But if let's talk about like something's changing suddenly, right? Like I think this post in particular was like something's happening. And just until now, there's nothing like this child hasn't really been willing to address it, but now we're willing to address it. Right. So that's kind of when we notice like, okay, I'm concerned. This is something different. This isn't the way that I've seen their patterns of behavior in the past. So when we see a change, like we want to address it. We want to say like, hey, I see you. Like, hey, I'm noticing that something's different. Not necessarily you're different, not necessarily like, where's the kid that was here before? Or,
right.
Where's your old self? Like, I know we say those things and we mean well, but to a kid, it's like, oh, well, I'm not who I'm supposed to be. Like, that's like saying that like who you are right now isn't okay because you're not how things used to be. And if you're feeling down and depressed, like you're probably already bummed out, like you're also frustrated that you're not feeling the same way that you used to feel, because if you used to feel happy and you don't now, but then when other people are telling you like, oh, I wish you could get back to your old self. Like, yeah, me too. Sorry, I now. Right. Like, sorry, I'm the worst now. Sorry, nobody wants to hang out with me anymore. Sorry. That's like a spiral. Right. So we want to kind of just be like, hey, I see you. Something's different. I'm here with you. Like, what can let's work together and, help make sure you can feel your best. Right? Like, we just want to help them now. We don't want to focus on like what things used to be. And I know we do that a lot.
Yeah. And it's hard too, because I feel like, and I haven't had this discussion with my child at this point. He's 9, although I'm sure he could, have things going on now, even at 9 that we would need to discuss. But I mean, it makes a lot of sense that you don't want to kind of, it's like almost the world is closing in, right? And then if mom and dad are like, hey bro, like we want to help you out and blah, 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 but you're not this, you're not that, you're not this, you're not that. But then for us, we're trying to find like a baseline. Like like in my head, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe that particular mom probably doesn't have that intent. Should she say that to her kid? But she's just looking for that baseline. Like, this is how things used to be. Now it's different. Here's the comparison kind of thing. And probably don't realize, what they're actually doing at that point.
That's exactly right. And so when we are comparing, that baseline helps us as parents recognize that there's been a change, right? So that's where that information is really helpful. So I could say like, okay, I see there's something going on and I don't know what it is. So then I can say to the child, like, hey, I see you, right? Like, I'm noticing that something's different. I want you to know that I'm here for you. It's really important that we don't pretend like everything's fine if it's not fine. Right. So like, I'm inviting you to say, you're not fine. I'm saying it's okay to not be fine. I'm saying it's not okay to pretend like we're okay when we're not okay. And that's going to open up just like pathways for communication, right? So we're not talking about the past. We're talking about the present. We're saying, hey, I've got you. Let's do this together. Like, what's up? Things can go bad and we can fix them. Whatever it is, we can handle this together. And so when we're opening that up, we're inviting the child to feel comfortable in where they are. We're creating what we call relational safety. We're creating that connection. Like, whether or not it seems that way, the kid is looking to you to just be the world. You are the solution. You are the antidote to the distress. You are the cure. That's not to say that you are the cause. You are the cure, though. And so your actions can make the difference in their help, in their getting better. And so a lot of times as parents, we get caught up in, did we cause this? What did we do? How did we mess up so bad that our kid is feeling so distressed, right? Like, that's, at least for me, I'm like, oh, what did I do wrong, right? Like, I should know better. I'm a therapist. How can my kid have problems? I should know. I do this for a living. Like, what's wrong with me, right? So now I'm in this spiral of like personal, like just negative self-talk, right? And that's not helping them and it's not helping me. And so it's important to get out of that, because if we make it about us, then they're definitely going to shut down.
Right.
Because my kid definitely doesn't want to make my life harder. They don't want to be a burden. Right. So they're committed to my stability. So what they're going to do is make sure that I don't think anything's wrong. That's what they're going to learn from that.
Yeah.
Right. So those are some of the things we want to be careful about, but we got to watch for it, because we're moms and we're humans.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
And that's what I think we forget a lot of time, is that we're humans, and kind of give ourselves that grace. Do you suggest, of course, it depends on the situation, right? I know. But do you suggest talking to teachers, principals, guidance counselors, school counselors, that kind of thing, if you're dealing with your teen and it's not a severe issue, so you don't need to go to, call the hotline right away. But what do you think about pulling those professionals into things?
I think that's a really good idea, especially if they have relationships with those teachers and principals and stuff, right? So like if your kid has a coach, like, hey, I'm noticing, like, let's say they're on a team or something like that, or like they're in the band, maybe the band teacher because like kids who are doing activities, like they're spending a lot of time with these other kids, these other adults. So we can get data, right? So I can call like the band teacher or the coach, and I can say like, hey, I'm noticing that, Charlie he seems really down and kind of disconnected. And I'm just wondering if you're noticing anything. Have you seen it? Like, how's he been in bands? Like, have you seen him act different, or does he seem kind of bummed out? Or maybe you've overheard some of the kids talking, like, what are the rumors going around? Like, what are some of the things happening at school? Cause like, there's all kinds of like TikTok trends and whatever's going on. It's like, I don't know what's going on.
Right. I can't even keep up for myself. Never mind for them.
Totally. I have no idea. I don't even know like how to access the video that I'm making with you right now after. Like, I'm like, how do you watch this back? I don't know. Ask Katie. Like, I literally have no clue. So those things can give us really good information, right? Like adults that work at the school will be aware of some of the trends going around. They'll be aware of the rumors. So you can get a little bit more information. You can also talk to your kids' friends, parents too, right? So, stay connected. Like, hey, Katie, are you noticing anything? Because, Charlie's he's been a little strange. Like, maybe they got in an argument. Did you hear anything? Like, cause they're best friends, right? So it's like, we want to go out and utilize our resources. And I think sometimes we don't do that because we're ashamed.
Yeah. Don't want people to know what's going on.
Right. So we don't want to say like, hey, there's trouble happening and I'm not good enough. And I'm telling you that I'm a terrible mom and that my kid sucks and that everything's terrible in my house and I don't know what I'm doing. And so it's like, we get into that, right? Like I'm spiraling again. So, okay, get out of the spiral. The adults in the child's life are there to keep the child safe. I am one of the adults in the child's life. So is their teacher. So is their coach. So is their friend's mom, right? So we've got to get out of that spiral and think about, okay, this child is depending on all of the adults in his life to help keep him safe and guide him through challenges. So as one of those adults, let me utilize my resources. It's not about me. It's about them. Mm-hmm. That distance helps me as a mom feel less blame, right? And more power.
Yeah.
Because I'm not the cause, but I am the cure, right? So being the cure is much more powerful than feeling like the cause.
Heck yeah. And that's what we need. We need empowered parents.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know it's really tough to kind of expose stuff that is so personal, especially with people that you might not have like a super close relationship with, like a coach or a teacher or something like that. But in the back of our minds, I feel like it's important to keep in mind that everybody has something. Like, everybody deals with something. Nobody's life is perfect. I don't care what it looks like on the outside. I don't care how much money they have. I don't care like how gorgeous they are, whatever. Like, everybody has stuff.
Yeah. That's so easy to forget.
It is.
That's so easy to forget. I can't remember. I was feeling jealous of somebody earlier today. I can't even remember who it was right now, but I was like, man, I wish I could be like them, right? Like, I wish I could have whatever it is that I saw at that moment that I felt like I didn't have,
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to forget. Like, we all have our strengths and none of us get through this unscathed.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. And my kid's only 9 and I feel like we have a pretty good relationship with his teacher. We communicate quite a bit, the principal, and some of his, like, I don't know, they call them electives, like music and stuff like that. I don't know. But like some of those teachers that he really quite likes, and he's had a couple years in a row now because he's been at the same school for a bit. But I feel like those relationships are important to keep as a parent, even throughout middle school, high school, because what if your kid ends up bonding with that coach or that particular teacher or that guidance counselor or that music teacher, whatever. And I feel like having a good relationship with them, they may be able to help sort of crack the walnut a little bit and get him or her talking, or at least moving toward resolving what's going on for them.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's often, especially today, right? Like, I remember when I shouldn't even say words anymore.
We won't share years, Laura. It's okay.
At some point, parents were really more connected with teachers, right? That was one of our only sources of contact. Like, it was a little bit more community, right? And recently we've had to go online. We've had like, there's all these different school options, right? Like there's different kids who are going to many different types of schools. There's so much innovation in education that has changed the way our kids are cared for in the school setting. And so I think some of us have not been as diligent about staying connected, right? And making sure that we have those conversations and making sure that we maintain those connections. I think for a lot of reasons, but like, especially just in the past few years. And then I don't know what your experience has been, but I'm guessing that a few other moms have had this experience where one of my kids has had like 3 different teachers in one class throughout the year because they just can't keep teachers on staff.
Yeah.
Yep. Because it's been a really tough few years for educators, right? Because there's like legislation, there's training, there's, COVID, there's expectations, there's all these things that have really affected the education system. And so it's made it really hard to have that consistency, I think.
And that really changes the landscape for them. If they're used to one person and they get comfortable with one person, then all of a sudden, boom, that switches on them, especially 2 and 3 times. That's to me is stressful.
Disruptive.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Oh, I have a new boss.
Yeah.
Oh, now I have a new boss again. How horrifying. Like I would be so stressed. Like you have to learn a whole nother person. Like you have to that's hard. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think we give enough credit to how stressful school actually is for kids. And not just school, like because of the school environment. I'm saying school because think about our jobs, right? No matter how easy and I don't want to get into necessarily for this episode, we could have a whole nother episode on it, but accessibility and changes, what are they? Accommodations. Geez.
There we go.
That's what I was trying to think. So not even on that level, but just generally, this is where they spend 8 hours or 6 hours a day. They have high expectations. They have to move from class to class. They have to interact socially. They have to navigate lunch. They have to figure out what they're doing. And I think we really don't give them enough credit for how stressful that is. Mm-hmm. Because we go to work and we expect everyone to understand how stressful that is.
Right.
But if you think about the relativity of it, of course that it's not as hard as work. Because you're a grown-up.
Right. So but it's similar.
That hard for your 7-year-old, right? You're not 7, you're an adult. So right. I think we should probably think about that part too. And just okay, I'm concerned about my kid. Well, let me think about what's happening at school. Right. Maybe my kid's acting out. Maybe they're not listening to me. Maybe they're showing these signs of defiance or whatever. And I hate the term defiance. We could make a whole episode on that too. But when we're seeing that stuff, we need to think about that environment too, right? Who are they interacting with? How is that going? What's happening at school? So those connections, those relationships are really important.
Well, right. And, I love that you kind of made that connection between going to work and going to school, because really it's similar for them, right? And they're younger and they're developing and they're figuring out who they are. And they're having to not only navigate to this whole, I got work to do, I have deadlines, I have all these different teachers now that I need to deal with, or maybe if they're older and they switch classes, that kind of thing. But they're also figuring out the whole social aspect of it all. And that is hard. That's gotta be so hard, especially when you don't quite know who you are or, a lot about yourself, because we go through growth and we really learn who we are, when you're my age. If that
seriously, that never ends.
Right. But I totally agree with you. We do not give them enough credit for their ability to do that day in and day out. Mm-hmm. And work is stressful for us. Mm-hmm. But it's stressful for them too. It's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not trying to suggest that we need to overly coddle. And, I think, so I get this a lot too, is okay, well, we can accept and empathize and really attune and connect and validate and acknowledge our child's distress and feelings and discomfort without coddling them. Mm-hmm. Boundaries are critically important. I get this question a lot about kids who are experiencing distress, like kids who are experiencing mental health crisis or experiencing mental health challenges. Obviously crisis is, like we said, we want to intervene. We've got hospitals for that. We've got, more professionals. But when they are coming home and we are continuing to kind of establish a sense of normal, like none of this means we don't have rules or boundaries or expectations for daily behaviors that are appropriate, right? And for not being abusive. So like for teens, let's say, well, I guess little kids too, it doesn't really matter, but kids can be mean, you guys. Like,
oh goodness.
And they can be mean to us too, as parents, and it hurts. And I know that they're just kids, but like that hurts my feelings. And it's really hard for me not to just like maybe lash back out at them or just like not want to help them because they're being so mean to me because they're having such a hard time. So like, we really need to be mindful about that aspect of things. Like when kids are acting out because they're going through something, we can acknowledge that they're going through something and acknowledge that the stress is a lot, acknowledge that these changes are difficult, acknowledge even if there was like a recent trauma, right? Without saying, and that's okay that you just, called me the B word, right? Like it's not okay. It's never okay.
Right.
Or that's okay that you just hit your brother or whatever. Like, no, it isn't. So it's important to set those boundaries too. We can empathize and love and attune and accept and connect. And we can say, and when we feel that way, sometimes it makes us want to hurt other people, or sometimes our bodies can be, so angry that we hit someone. And that's not okay. That's not okay to do. No matter how upset I am, it's not okay for me to hurt another person emotionally or physically. And so there's this sort of line or understanding from people sometimes where it's like, it's really difficult to discern what is coddling and enabling versus accepting and attuning. Right. So I can validate you without agreeing with you.
Right.
And I can also say, and it's still not okay to cause harm to another person. And we can have that and still be loving, right? Like, so I think that's important. That's an important piece of this all too, right? Because I think sometimes we have a tendency to just like get scared of our kids. Right?
Yeah. Especially if they're older. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do that.
Yeah. My
kid's 9 and I already feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And my kids are bigger than me. And if they were aggressive and, that's terrifying. That's scary for me. Right. Like, so, and it's not safe. And so it's really important that we draw that line and we say, like, I understand that you're going through things right now. And I understand that you're feeling depressed and you've been having this hard time. And I want you to know that I am with you and I'm going to care for you always. And it's not okay to behave in an abusive way towards another person, no matter what we're feeling. And so let's work through this together. Like, let's figure out a way to express our feelings instead of acting them out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Speaking about this particular post, and where this mom is like, where do I start? Now that he wants to get talking to somebody, what are your suggestions of, now that we've determined it's not a severe emergency, now what?
I think she mentioned a PCP, right? So she knows she's on the right track. We can get medical care. We can go to their pediatrician or whatever. If they don't have a regular pediatrician, like a Google search. I obviously you find me or my practice or whatever. And so if my practice, what I do as a therapist is if somebody reaches out to me and they're struggling, and I'm not a good fit, or my office isn't a good fit for whatever reason. It could be cost. It could just be like, you think I'm a weirdo. I don't know, whatever. Like if I'm not a good fit, then I will generally have someone that I recommend.
Mm-hmm.
So I have colleagues, right? I'm not alone in this field. And so it's important that everyone knows there's someone out there for you. And if it's not me, that's okay. Right. Having that good relationship is like something like 80% of the prognosis is like basically how well a person will do in therapy. 80% of that has to do with the relationship between the person and the therapist. Like you could be a decent therapist and have really great outcomes because you have really great relationships. You know, you could be a really great therapist and have terrible outcomes because you don't have good relationships with your clients, right? So getting the right fit is super important. And anyone that it will have a conversation with you should be able to provide a recommendation or a referral. And I know I do that. I know my office does that. So that's one thing that's really important to us here is if I can't help you for whatever reason, then I want you to know that here's 4 other places that might be able to.
Are there different kinds of therapists? Like,
yeah, I think, so I know we talked about some of the modalities a couple of episodes ago. So, you know, there's group therapy. There's, support groups, like where it's more just like educational and not therapeutic. There's, coaching. There's, you know, I had someone recently where we talked about the difference between a life coach and a therapist, right? So there's different things. There's also, there's courses, right? So my thing is always whatever you can get the kid to agree to.
Do it.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if the kid's like, yeah, I want to try this, like, great, start there. Right. And so I think, again, the relationship, right? Because that's what's important. It's buy-in.
Yeah.
They want to have control. They want to feel understood, and they deserve to feel like they have a say in what matters to them. And so that we're not just sending them to therapy so that they can behave better and stress us out less.
Right. It's not about us.
It's not about us. I have one of the kids that I work with told me that. She was like, you know, I'm just here because, you know, there's something wrong with me and my, you know, parents want me to behave better and I need to, and it's like, because they think that there's something bad. So it's really important that we talk to, like, hey, these are all the different ways that adults even can get support, right? Because as kids, we're very centered in individual relationships. So what I mean by that is I should have everything I need within me and my parent. And if I need anything outside of that, that means I'm not good enough. Because the way I see my parent is that they're giving me everything. They're doing their best job. And so if I can't still make it on my own after that, that's on me. Right. So if you kind of think about it that way, that's when heavy. So when a parent says to a kid, like, oh, here, go to this person to get help, the kid can feel that as like, oh, I'm not doing good enough. Right. Because they can't fathom that their parent doesn't happen to have 100% of every single piece of information, but that's just not how the world works. We don't get all of our support from one person.
Right.
That's too much. I get my support from you. I get my support from my boyfriend. I get my support from my mom, from my family, from my friends, from my colleagues, from my teachers. Right. So we can help our kids know when we're talking about therapy and we're talking about what that means. And so counseling, therapy, support, classes, teaching, coaching, there's all these different languages, but really what we're doing is we're saying, hey, we all learn and grow, and we get a lot of help from our whole community. And so when you're struggling, I'm not always going to be the exact best person to help you learn how to do that.
Right.
What I am is the exact best person to keep you physically and emotionally safe all the time. And sometimes that means bringing in more community to make sure that your world is enriched and well-rounded, right? Because it's not the parent's fault that the kid doesn't understand what therapy is and thinks there's something wrong with them.
Right.
That's just not how kids think.
Right. So you mentioned group therapy, and I just want to talk about that real quick, because I don't know a lot about it. And I kind of feel like, and you tell me in your experience, but I feel like being a teenager, I would have liked that. I feel like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's a group of people just like you. So maybe it's all teenagers. And we're sharing about ourselves in front of others, but we're getting support and understanding from our peers that are probably going through the same thing. Like, that's just what I think. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, right? Like when we're in a group setting, it depends on what the group is for, but a lot of times the group will be for something that is specific. So for example, there's a lot of groups out there for young, maybe adolescents with disordered eating.
Okay.
Right. So that's like one thing. They're all kind of there with the same stuff. There could be a group for adolescents who are struggling with addiction. Right. So like there could be a group for kids, like young kids whose parents are divorced. Right. There could be. So there's very specific, and then there's also like broad. There's like IOP groups for people who just got released from like an inpatient crisis unit. And that's from 13 to 18. And they're just working on skills. Right?
And they have all like different skills to work on, but they're just kind of doing it together.
Yeah. So there's levels of specificity. And so every kid is different, right? Like I have a lot of kids who are like, I really want a group.
Yeah.
Right. Because I like that. I thrive on interactions from my peers. I have some other kids that are like, social anxiety paralyzes me and I can't actually interact with another person my age in person. Right.
Wow. Ouch.
So it's just different. And so if with the social anxiety, oh my goodness, that's happening now. If you think about just COVID, developmentally. So like if you're a middle school, like if you're a high schooler right now, if you're like a sophomore or a junior, then your freshman year was the year we shut down.
Yeah. Ouch.
Right. So like you went to school and then all of a sudden school was over.
Yep.
And then you went back and then you couldn't stay again. And then and everything was crazy and the world was going crazy. And maybe your family lost their income or a job, or maybe your mom was a nurse and it was very scary at home. Maybe, right? So it's like,
yeah,
whoa,
stress.
And you're a pre-adolescent, adolescent who's supposed to be learning how to like develop strong relationships with their peers and like take risks and experience novelty and sort of like experiment with the world and try and fail. And, that's when your brain is supposed to be experiencing like its renaissance of like this transition from childhood to adulthood. But you were like locked in your room the whole time. And your sister who's in kindergarten was trying to get homeschooled by your dad, who is like an investment banker and was like on the phone all day. Like, what?
Yeah. Right? What a mess
So,
for them.
What a mess for them. So like, if I was them, I would have social anxiety too. I would be like, because I would have no clue how to interact with another peer because I just didn't get to learn that. Like, so my brain was making these connections because biology still went on.
Right.
My biology didn't stop. My exposure did. So my biology dictated that I start to think about the world around me and I start to think of others and I start to want to connect with others and I start to desire to differentiate from my family and feel a close connection with my peers, because that's how, we go from family to community and for the survival of the species as a whole. Right. So that was all still happening inside of me, but I was alone. I couldn't talk to anybody. I didn't get the exposure to any new things or to experiment with my interests or my hobbies. I didn't get access to any kind of enriching activities to, nurture these connections that are happening in my brain. And so they all sort of just faced inward to say, well, I'm supposed to be doing this, but I have no idea how to do this. And therefore I'm stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. I never thought of that. I mean, I did, but not quite that deep. Mm-hmm. And it was more for me because of what I experienced during that time. I was, my head was more like with the little kids, not necessarily the ones that were going through that big transition, because going from middle school to high school,
oh my gosh,
big transition.
It's huge.
I mean, not only for, the physical, all the physical aspects of it, but man, like I remember going into my freshman year scared as shit. Like the seniors, they all looked so big and old and, and here I am, I didn't even have boobs yet. Like, right. You know what I mean? It was so hard time.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm in this class with like fully grown adults and like
with beards,
right. With like beards. And like, I haven't even had my period. Like, I don't even know what's going on. I'm a mess. Like I've got, my like LA year, like, Lisa Frank edition or something. And
this is what we used to wear back in the day. All right, everybody.
Really cool. Just Google it. You won't regret it. And then there's these other kids who are like literally like adult men. Like what even is this? Right. So it's very hard. It's very confusing. It's a difficult time. And so like, even if you go back further than that, so like we're talking about older kids now, right? Like, so we're talking about kids today who are 16, 17. What about the kids who today are freshmen? And so in 2020, they were a sixth grader and they stopped going to school and just never went back. Think about middle school. You start changing classes. You start having real grades. Like that's when you start prepping. Like you didn't even get to go to a real middle school. Like you didn't have that experience. Like everything is a mess. So it's like these kids really experienced a social emotional desert during this time. And so we really need to consider that even though the pandemic, didn't maybe affect their house directly or something like that, right? Like whether you are, no matter how you feel about it or what you believe about it is irrelevant. The fact is that the world shifted and left these kids into this like social emotional desert where they didn't get to access the same things that their minds were supposed to have access to in order to facilitate this learning that was supposed to happen, right? So they made these connections, their mind shifted, their biology shifted, but their information access never got there. So they have the drive, they don't have the skills. And so for those kids, we want to be compassionate about that.
Right.
And let them know that like, it's okay that they're not where they want to be or where they think they should be, because it makes sense. They missed out on some stuff. So we're going to help them. We're going to walk through that now. We're going to help repair some of that loss.
Right. And let's toss on top of that, their parents were probably freaked out,
totally,
not knowing what was going on. They were probably, their parents either maybe did lose income for a certain amount of time or whatever the case may be. So there's lots of stress there. The world was at each other's throats.
Yeah, a lot of the conflict was really hard for kids.
Yeah.
We had to talk about on top.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I mean, I think first and foremost, when we're addressing our kids' mental health issues, like really step back and think about what it's like to be a child and how much understanding they truly have and what their capacities are. So it's important that we don't expect more than they're capable of in terms of their mental stability. And when you look at your kid and you realize that they are behind because they didn't get access to certain things and maybe like their social emotional development isn't quite where it could be at their age, then we need to say like, yeah, they're really too old to be in this situation. I thought that when they were this age, I wouldn't have to still do this for them, but well, you do. So do it anyway. Like, I know that that's a hard thing to do, is to sort of like, because as a parent myself, like I've been in a situation where like, I thought that my kids would be like totally self-sufficient at XYZ, or I wouldn't have to keep reminding them to do the dishes, like whatever. Right.
Right.
I thought a lot of things.
Yeah, no.
But that's not always how it works out. So it's important to just be like, you know what? Okay. What I anticipated from my 16-year-old, right? I thought they would be excited about driving. I thought they would want to get a job like I did, right? Because I loved that freedom. Like, but it's not you, it's them.
Right.
So we need to take ourselves out of that too. That's one of the ways that we get in our own way, is to think like, well, they're supposed to be at this place. Well, they're not. So here we are.
I think we have a very hard time with that as parents. I think
so
that's a
hard.
huge point.
Yeah. And why? Well, because it makes me feel like I failed.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm me. So how can I not think of me? That's
exactly.
really hard.
That's such a good point. That's my frame of reference.
Right.
This is what I did. Why wouldn't you do that? I don't know. Right. You're right. I love that. I'm me. I would think of me. Yeah. So we kind of have to stop and realize, okay, well, they're them. So let's think of, what are they doing? Them. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm me. They're them.
Yeah. I know it sounds so simple, but it's not. It's
right.
Really, and especially when you're in that mode and your emotions have taken over logic.
Totally.
Then what? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And maybe you have 4 other kids to take care of, and you don't have a ton of time. Right. I think that's hard too, is like, to have the patience means to have the time. You have to slow things down, and that's tough to do. That's tough to do. So slowing things down, letting the kid know like, hey, I see you, and we don't pretend that things are fine when they're not fine. So let's get through it. Right. Because the only reason why we pretend is if we believe that we're not capable of handling it. That's not true. So we're going to say it's not fine. And you deserve for the adults in your life to keep you safe. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that you get access to care. We're going to make sure that we learn about this group. Right. And, it's important to let the kid have some control over that, and let them have some say in it. Like, let them talk to a therapist, have a consult, right? We do consults. Like, I talk to moms. I need to talk to the parents first, because I need to help them understand what the process is and the cost and all of that. But if a kid is sort of feeling reluctant, like, have them give us, let us set up an appointment to talk and get their questions answered. Because if the kid's like, ugh, I hate that lady, like, okay, well, then go somewhere else. Right. Like, so we'll find that out. And I'm sure that that's happened. Like, so it's like, we want to let our kids know that like they can be part of that process, but that one of the options isn't to just do nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
We can't just do nothing. We have to do something. Let's figure out what works for you.
Right.
And the social anxiety thing it's giant in moms too. And I would love it if we could do an episode about it in the future. Because, I just had the conversation today. I have the conversation 2 and 3 times a day sometime, because I do talk to a lot of moms with, through Mom Nation and whatnot, and with all the events and things that we have going on. And, a lot of times I will have that conversation. Hey, I would have loved to have gone to that Dr. Seuss breakfast event, but I literally cannot walk into a crowd. I can't do it. And I have such debilitating, social anxiety. And I feel like it really affects a lot of our mama population out there. And that would be really helpful to talk about. Excuse me. Sorry. So if we can at a later date.
I think we should. And, as that's why is there Mom Nation?
Right. Right.
Because parenting, momming can be isolating.
It's so true. And that's exactly why it was started.
I know that.
You know that. It's exactly why. And then it grew into this, what I feel like is an amazing resource for many. But yeah, that is exactly why it began. And so I think it's highly appropriate that we talk about it and kind of maybe help share some ideas of some different things that people can do to get to where they want to be in life, right? Like maybe they don't want to be, on stage and on the radio and blah, 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 right? Like you don't have to, that's okay. Yeah. But where do you want to be? Do you want to be able to go to the Dr. Seuss breakfast and not think twice about it and not worry about what your hair looks like and what everybody's thinking about you? Like, do you want to be able to do that? Okay, let's get you there.
Yeah. We meet people where they are, and that includes our kids and that includes our moms. And, I think that it's really important for everyone to know that they're not alone, and that's like I was saying about kids get their support from the adults in their life, from their moms, from their dads, from their coaches, whatever. Adults get the support from their communities.
Yeah.
We get our needs met from a variety of people. And that's important. It's important to remember that we're not supposed to just figure all this out on our own.
Right. We're not supposed to be alone.
No, right? We're not. It's never meant that way. So
that's why they always, like in all my years, I'm not going to tell you how many years, but everybody out there knows because I share it anyway. But I've always heard it takes a village, and it really, truly does. Even when you are not a child, it still takes a village.
Absolutely. And so I love this community, and I love to be a part of it too. Being a part of this village is really great.
Totally agree. And we love that you're a part of it. Me especially. So if anybody in the village would like to get in touch with you, see if maybe you're a good fit for them or for their kiddo or whatever, what's the best way to do that?
You can find us online at www.benavieri.com, Benavieri. You can probably also find the link in the show notes. Hopefully that'll be easy for you. But one of the things is a fast way to get in touch with us is via text. You can shoot a text to 480-427-0122. And because I'm back to back with clients all the time, text is the easiest way for me to get back if my assistant's not online. So yeah, you can reach out and we will help you figure out what is the right next step.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is so helpful because, being a mom and not having experienced a lot of stuff because I only have a 9-year-old, so I haven't gone through like all the big kid stuff. Yeah. I freeze. I'm like, oh, never been here before. What to do? Who to call? And that's like not my personality. Like that's not normal for me. I usually know who to call and what to do.
Sure.
So it's like, but as a mom, I'm like, I
yeah. When we're in the middle of it, it's a lot harder to see the solutions.
Right. Yep. Exactly. I actually had a conversation with Sherry about that not too long ago. But anyway, if you out there are in our mama members, I don't know. I'm like losing my words today too. Our Mom Nation mama members, if you want to check out any of our past episodes, hop on over to our YouTube channel. It's so pretty. It's really nicely organized. And I happen to be very proud of that. But hop on over there. Our handle is at Mom Nation USA. Scroll down to the mental wealth playlist. It's like right in the middle of the homepage. You will see it. And then you can see all of our previous episodes and all of the topics that we have talked through so far. This is episode 14, I think. So 13 or 14, something like that. I don't know. Don't quote me, but it's well over 10 now.
So exciting.
So we got a good little library over there. If you are more of the audio version, maybe you run a lot, hike a lot, drive a lot, pick up your kids, sit in the waiting line a lot, then you can hop on over to your favorite podcast platform, do a quick little search for Mom Nation Talk Radio. You will then, if you hit the notification little bell or whatever it is on your platform, then you will be notified of every time we drop another episode. Mental Wealth is there every month, and you will be notified when we drop it. All right. I did say it was Mom Nation Talk Radio, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I did. Okay. Awesome. Well, until next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.